Hi.
Afternoon.
Hi. I'll start with a brief introduction of my experience and academic background before hitting the ground with the presentation on financial technology, recent developments and prospects. So, assuming this is going to work, yeah, that's me. My name is Abdul Qadir Al-Jandali. I currently work as a senior lecturer in banking and finance at Anglia Ruskin University, where I am as well the director of the MBA in Fintech and Big Data Analytics. I've got a profile on different academic platforms such as Academia and ResearchGate, where you can find more information about my profile. I think this is the plan that we're going to have today. So I'll spend 2 more minutes just sharing with you what I've been doing in the last few years in terms of research. After that, we'll go to the gist of today's presentation, which is the financial technology aspect of things. The third element that I would like to attack as part of today's presentation is focus on Morocco, in particular, mobile payments in Morocco. And last but not least, there will be the opportunity to ask questions, have a discussion, etc. Okay, off we go. So that's me. I'm glad to say that I'm an alumni of the ENCG CETAT. I got a diploma in auditing and management control back in 2006. Following my degree in CETAT, I moved to the UK. This is where I completed a master's in international finance and successfully defended my PhD thesis in finance. Recently, I completed a certificate in financial technology from the University of Oxford. In terms of professional or work experience, this is what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so, starting with Toyota Motor Corporation, and then moving to academia about 10 years ago, where I worked as a lecturer in quantitative methods at London Metropolitan University before being promoted to senior lecturer in quantitative finance at Regent's University London, followed by an experience at Coventry University in the capacity of a senior lecturer in finance. And only recently, about 18 months ago, I joined Anglia Ruskin as a senior lecturer in banking and finance and director of the new MBA in Fintech and Big Data Analytics. In terms of publications, so I've produced a number of publications. The latest one is an article on Fintech, which is under review in a journal called Bancaria. Bancaria is the journal of the Central Bank of Italy. Also recently, I published a paper on exchange rate modeling in emerging markets. Last year, I published a textbook on quantitative analysis with eViews. I think those of you who are familiar with quantitative analysis, they'd be familiar with eViews. This is an econometrics software package. Before that, I had the opportunity to publish a number of textbooks with SPSS as well, in addition to an article that focuses in Morocco about 5 years ago, or the relationship between the EU and Morocco. And this was a chapter as part of the annual report published by Regent's University London. And about 8 years ago, there was also research with a focus on exchange rates volatilities in Africa. So this is more or less what I've done in terms of publication. And that will take us now to the essence of today's presentation, which is an introduction to financial technology. Before I start talking fintech, I feel it might be useful for the audience to look at the question I'm asking here. How familiar are you with the content? I mean, how familiar are you with fintech as a concept or with financial technology? If you can rate your current competency on the following scale, if you know nothing about fintech, you can type 1 on the message chat box. If you know bits and pieces, maybe 3. If you're an expert, you can type 5. This is only for me to have a rough idea about our audience, their level, and how familiar they are with the fintech as a concept, if you want, with financial technology as a concept. I'm not going to check it now, I'll check it later, but I would appreciate it as we go along if you can type any number from 1 to 5 that reflects your ability or your understanding of fintech, because I'm going to ask the question again towards the end. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of measure how far we have gone in the presentation. Long story short, fintech has significantly influenced business development in the financial services industry. So what you have at the bottom here, this is a definition of fintech provided to us by Morningstar. Fintech companies are businesses that leverage new technology to create new and better financial services for both consumers and businesses. It includes companies of all kinds that may operate in personal financial management, insurance, payment, asset management, etc. The reason I decided that it is very important to define fintech is the fact that some people do confuse fintech with financial innovation. Those two concepts are different. In fact, financial innovation is the constant process of creating new financial products, services, or processes. So if you want, financial innovation can be anything, any type of innovation in the financial industry. And one example of this innovation is fintech, which means an innovation that is based on new technology. So if you want, financial innovation is the family, and a subfamily or subcategory of this family would be fintech. Okay, so you have a definition here. Financial innovation can be described as something new that reduces costs, reduces risks, or provides an improved product service instrument that better satisfies participants' demands. So the aim is the same, try to satisfy the end user or consumers if you want, by providing a bespoke, a customized service, but the means can be different. The moment you say fintech, you're talking about significant impact of technology in the financial innovation. So that's the essence of the concept of fintech. Now let's explore the main areas of fintech. You have a slide in front of you where I try to summarize the main technologies that you would come across when you're trying to learn more about fintech. At the top left of your screen, you have blockchain. And I like to think, or I would assume that many people here would have heard of Bitcoin before. Bitcoin, this is a digital currency or cryptocurrency, a technology, or this is, if you want, cryptocurrencies are based on the blockchain technology, which means you do not have what we used to have in the past. In the past, a currency was supported by a central bank. Traditionally, currencies, what we call fiat currencies, would be supported by a central bank. But what you have now with cryptocurrencies is that you do not need this intermediary anymore. We call this disintermediation of finance, which means you eliminate that institution, that legacy institution in the middle, and you have, if you want, buyers and sellers, or supply and demand of the currency floating in the market. So cryptocurrency are underlined by the blockchain technology, and this here is one innovation, one fintech, or one example of fintech innovation. Another example under the blockchain family is smart contracts. There's an increasing now use of smart contracts, which means you are able to sign contracts online. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some services like DocuSign, where, if you want, your signature is verified online without the need for you to move or to be present physically. Okay, so blockchain, if you want, is one example of fintech. This is a financial innovation. Another example are the lending platforms. Again, in the past, what we had in terms of financial services, if you needed a loan or if you needed funds, you would go to a bank to borrow money and potentially to use this money for consumption or investment purposes. Well, what you have now is what we call P2P or peer-to-peer lending. Again, you eliminate that bank in the middle is being eliminated in a way, and you've got those agents in need of cash or in need of liquidity, and those agents with cash or fund surplus, they can meet online on a lending platform and trade directly with one another. Obviously, the direct impact of this is that the cost for each one of them, so whether it is the transaction cost or the interest cost, will drop. And this is why we believe fintech is definitely a tool that would enable individuals and institutions to run more efficiently at a reduced cost. A third area, a third example of fintech are the payments. I think in Morocco, mobile payments are quite advanced. This is something I'll focus on my case study presentation later on. But I think the most important, or the one example I can think of very clearly when we talk about the African continent is M-Pesa. I think they are a leader on the mobile payment sector in Africa. Well, in Europe or in the UK in particular, WorldPay is a leader in terms of digital payments. The essence of payments in itself is an example, or the innovations that we have had in payments in the last few years are definitely one great examples of where fintech can disrupt the market. And disruption is something that I'll talk about in the next slide. InsurTech, actually, this is a funny one because I was driving my car this morning, and in the UK now, when you get a new insurance for your car, you're asked to plug a device whereby the insurance company would have access to various types of data. For example, the speed at which you're driving your car, the time in the day when you're driving your car, whether during the day, at night, etc. How you're braking, how you so they're able to access loads of data in order for them to decide what kind of insurance premium you have to pay. So now there's an increasing use of technology, if you want, in the insurance industry, and that's what we call InsurTech. And you have the examples between brackets. This is the increase in access of insurance companies to behavioral data of their customers, which would enable them to offer a bespoke service. Now, the good news is, if they, in their judgment, my driving is safe, I do not do many miles or many kilometers every week, I'll be eligible for discount next year. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it can be good news when they access your data. Now, obviously, I would imagine that some listeners would be uncomfortable with the fact that an insurance company would have access to private data. Some people might have a problem in terms of privacy, and that's definitely a discussion to be had at some point. So another area of fintech is what we call robot advice. And you're going to see in the next few slides that this robot advice has one of the biggest impacts on investment management, simply because by robot advice, I mean this is the role that a traditional investment management consultant would play. So an investment management consultant would advise customers in terms of investment options. And what you have now, robo advisory, is a concept with increasing popularity. The robo advisory means that the machine now can advise the customer without the need for a human being or person, which and that's why we believe that this is very disruptive for the investment management industry. I'm gonna move to the concepts you have on the left-hand side of your screen. Bottom left, you have AI. And the example I gave there is algorithmic trading. Again, this is another area where fintech is definitely disrupting the way or practices in finance. Algorithmic trading, well, this is where the algorithm or the algorithms are developed to execute trades based on the changes that happen in the market. So definitely there is an element of artificial intelligence now in finance that will only increase in popularity in the next few years. I'll talk about big data before finishing with the numerous other areas. Big data, we talk about big data simply because the data that is available nowadays is greater in dimension, in terms of speed. We talk about the three V's in terms of big data, and that's volume, velocity, and veracity. I don't want to get too much into the details of this, but the basic idea is that we have, or institutions now have, a bigger access or wider access to data simply because now We use different devices. We use laptops, mobiles. They can collect data from social media, from our Facebook accounts, LinkedIn accounts, etc. So this increase in access to data is definitely one of the main drivers, or one of the main areas where fintech is thriving. If you look at it from a positive perspective, well, obviously this helps institutions and companies to tailor their services and produce things that we need, that are bespoke, that are customized. I mean, the other side of the coin is that this kind of data can be used at times in a way that is not 100% ethical. Now, before finishing with the numerous other areas, I want to say one word about deep and thin learning. Obviously, those of you who are familiar with the concept of machine learning would know that the moment you talk about deep learning, you talk about facial recognition. In fact, I know that banks now, if you have in the UK, I mean, every single person can have access to the bank account using their mobile phone. And what we had in the last few years is that all you needed is your footprint. Yeah. So you put your thumb on somewhere when you need to log on to your account, and that's it. The moment the mobile recognizes your fingerprints, that's it. You can access your account. But what you have now, there's facial recognition as well. The moment the device is able to recognize you recognizes your face, well, that's it. This is one way to authenticate your identity. So that's deep learning, and then you have thin learning, machine learning, etc. But what I'm trying to say is, what is happening in technology is definitely disrupting the way companies are doing things nowadays. It's not only in finance, but you have reg tech, that's regulation tech, whereby regulators now are using technology to make the access and the compliance with regulation easier, smooth, fit for purpose. Prop tech, the use of technology in the property or the estate industry. I can think of a couple of examples. The main one would be the use of augmented and virtual reality, whereby customers, instead of them needing to go physically visit apartments or houses and going around in circles, they can do this by staying with the estate agents, and, for example, using augmented reality or virtual reality goggles. Yeah, it's like 3D. It's like a virtual tour, but not on a computer. But they use goggles, like big industrial 3D glasses, if you want. Another area of where fintech is definitely making great strides is digital banking. In the UK, we had our first digital bank about 6 years ago. That's Starling Bank, and they've been gaining an increase in market share, not least because of the pandemic situation, by the way. So what you have here are the main areas I identified in my research where I feel that fintech is definitely disrupting the financial industry and beyond. Okay. So talking about disruption, we've got some numbers here. So the most important technology is disrupting the financial world. I'm not going to read every single number here, but I'll focus probably on the first one. See, machine learning and the AI-based investing. So 63% of fintech professionals believe that this new technology will disrupt the financial world. Look at that number. This is the biggest number we have on this graph. 68% of financial advisors believe that robot advisors would disrupt the financial industry. 68%. So it is happening. It is here. It's not theoretical. This is practical. I spoke to somebody recently about the use of robot advisors in Morocco. I'd be interested to hear from the audience later on what they think and whether this is an area that would have any prospects in the African continent. Digital lenders. So this is the peer-to-peer lending part of the presentation. So 54% of retail bankers believe that this will have an impact. And 44% of professionals or fintech professionals believe that the blockchain technology will disrupt the financial world. So quite interesting. quite interesting statistics. So we've been speaking about fintech, and what I'm doing here is trying to summarize the main goals and later on the figures that we have in terms of fintech. So the main goal of fintech, first one, is, as I mentioned earlier, to reduce transaction and service costs. That's the first one. You want to reduce. You want to make it cheaper for customers or end users to use the financial industry. Another goal or key driver of fintech innovations is the ambition to reach market segments which would otherwise be impractical or uneconomic to engage. I think this is something I'll touch on my presentation later when I talk about the case of Morocco and the fact that there is an unbanked or underbanked population, which means people that do not have a bank account. So fintech makes it easy or increase the chances of those people being able to access or to have a bank account, maybe a digital one, because obviously the cost that would be attached to this one would be much less than in comparison to a traditional bank. So what fintech does as well, it creates and takes advantage of economies of scale. Last but not least, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, fintech improves customer experience. So main goals of fintech, you've got reducing, reaching, creating, and improving. Global top 10 fintech deals in 2018. The reason I included this slide is because I wanted to show you the main actors globally when we talk about fintech investments. So what you have here, so the biggest fintech deal, that was representative US-based company, and then you have China, UK, Denmark. If you look at the 10 different deals, you definitely have the US and China leading the way, but it is also heartwarming to see that the UK is doing its fair bit. In fact, I like to think that in the next few slides, I've got slightly more details about, there's a comparison between the UK and China. But before I get to that slide, let me share with you this. Global fintech investment fell short of 2018's record year, with 137.5 billion invested in 2019 compared to 141 billion in 2018. That's a lot of money. So the global fintech and mergers and acquisitions rose from 91 billion in 2018 to 97.3 billion in 2019, despite a strong drop in the number of MADs from 622 to 426. What does this mean? In a nutshell, we have less deals, but the size of the deals that are happening are getting bigger and bigger. So this is interesting because although you had a decrease in terms of deal, but in terms of the size or the volume of transactions, fintech is definitely growing, is definitely an attractive investment for equity companies and investors alike. So that's why I said earlier, as the size of market size in China, so China fintech funding was about 18.2 billion last year. Obviously, this is a study by KPMG in 2019, and you've got the source here for those who want to find out more. But I want to compare this with the UK, 20.7 billion. So China, 18.2, the UK, 20.7, where I'm not surprised that the UK or London is called or is named the capital or the fintech capital. And the reason being, I don't mean to be patriotic here, but if you compare this with Europe, look at this number, 34 million. In the UK, we're talking about billions. In Europe, they're lagging behind. And therefore, it is very interesting to witness that I like to think that for the last 10, 15, or even 20 years, and this is something I teach actually to my students, I used to say that London is the financial capital, the global financial capital of the world, is the financial hub, mainly because 40% of financial transactions used to transit by London, where it seems that even with fintech, London is still or seems to be leading in terms of investment and in terms of being an attractive place for investment. Now, it remains to be seen whether because obviously there's a lot happening with China, with Russia, with the United States, with Brexit, the B word. It'll be interesting actually to watch and see what will happen in the next few years. But as things stand, I would encourage anybody to look at what's happening in the fintech place in London. There's plenty of support for fintech ideas, for fintech startups, for fintech research. So it might be interesting, anybody listening here and willing to explore fintech in their research, or one aspect of fintech in their research, or do cross-country comparison, it might be interesting actually to look at what's happening in the UK. Try to emulate this maybe in Morocco, North Africa, MENA region. The word is your oyster, but it might be useful and helpful to look at what's happening in the UK. So the key consideration in fintech, it is here to stay, and it's part of the way the word will work. So this is not a one-off increase or one-off. It's not a trend that will disappear, but it is definitely here to stay. In fact, the reason I mentioned Starling Bank earlier is because during the pandemic, I believe, listening to the CEO, Anne Bowden, she spoke a couple of weeks ago on the fintech, the 11FS fintech breakfast show, and if I remember well, I think she mentioned the number 300,000 new customers during the pandemic. So because in essence, the trend in the UK in the last 10 years was that less and less customers were willing to go to the branch. They'd rather use banking services via their mobile. So the trend was already there. What Starling banks, what the digital bank is doing now is even making it less likely for customers to be wanting to have a traditional account, because the simple reason you'll have everything. The structure of Starling Bank. Well, I don't mean to do any advertising on their behalf. I don't work for them, but it seems that what they're trying to do is to adapt to the market in terms of increasing people using, or increasing number of people using technology and relying on technology. So they're trying to build on that, and they're trying to adapt to and adjust to the expectations of customers here. So as we saw earlier, there's an increase in size in terms of fintech transactions. Fintech is global by nature. Millennials matter mainly because people who were born in the 90s or later on, they were born with the internet, they were born with mobile phones available around them at a quite cheap price, and therefore their acceptance towards fintech innovation would be greater in comparison to the generation that precedes them. Obviously, there remains the issues of trust in the financial industry, in algorithms. Because some people still want to deal with humans rather than machines, especially when it comes to money. Obviously, another key consideration is when you talk fintech, because the essence of it is relying on technology, then there is a question to be asked, as in what kind of architecture is appropriate to what kind of technology. Okay, I'll move swiftly to talking about Morocco before opening the questions and answers part of the presentation. Yeah, well, thank you for those who answered. I can see a couple of numbers here. Nasreen 2, Kauta 2, Ahmed 1, Abdul Jalil 1, Abdullah. Thanks very much. Thomas is there as well. Hi, Thomas. Okay, so let's move to, I want to share with you the other presentation. So this probably means I need to stop sharing and then start sharing something different. That's the presentation I'm looking for. I hope you can see it. Okay, mobile payments in Morocco. Well, you'd be surprised, or maybe not so surprised, to know that digital payments is by far the largest component of fintech by transaction volume. So we spoke about different examples of fintech or different areas of fintech earlier. So what you have here is that mobile payments is the biggest The estimated market worldwide is around $3.6 trillion. That was back in 2018. My assumption is this number has grown even further in the last few years. So, facts. Only 29% of adults in Morocco have access to a bank account. This is not me saying this. This is a report by the World Bank that was published in 2017. In fact, if anybody wants references, or even I'm more than happy to make this presentation available to Hasna later, and I'm sure she can forward it to fellow participants in the webinar. But so those numbers are not estimates. This is something that was published by the World Bank in 2017, saying that adults who have access to bank accounts in Morocco represent only 29% of the population, which is below the MENA region. In the MENA region, the average is 44, whilst in Morocco is 29%. What I'm trying to present here is an effort. This is something I worked on with fellow researchers, a couple of researchers. We were conducting research in fintech in general, and we felt that it might be interesting to look at what's happening in Morocco. So what you have here is, if you want, the findings of our research. But yeah, I kept it light in the presentation. Later on, I'm more than happy to maybe answer any questions you have about that. So there seems to be, well, you have the number in there, 29%, but in the countryside in Morocco, this number is even lower. And therefore, there seems to be a need maybe for a wallet or e-wallet or a digital payment solution targeted for the rural economy in Morocco. It can have a focus on farmers, it can have focus on traders, but there seems to be a need in the market. The market is fertile in Morocco, and we'll see in the next few slides why that is the case. There's a wider ecosystem of additional financial products and services to be built around the wallet once the critical mass has been reached through rapid customer acquisition. So this wallet, and I'm looking now at the left-hand side of the screen, will have to be compatible with population that is left, especially in rural areas. They can still use this solution. Okay, so what you have here are other elements of our research. Digital wallet to be accessible through both smartphone and non-smartphone. Again, because not every single person in Morocco has a smartphone, so maybe some of the existing solutions that rely too much on technology would not be feasible or relevant to the population. And we thought actually a mobile payment solution in Morocco can include saving, investment products, P2P, micro-lending, overdraft facilities, etc. Now, how does the investment landscape look like in Morocco? We think it's unique and has the potential to be highly disrupted if you want. So anybody willing to offer fintech innovations in Morocco, we believe they have the potential to disrupt the market. We also believe that there is a highly favorable market backdrop. I'm going to explain this a bit more in detail in the next few slides, but I'm just giving you kind of the bullet points of the research. We believe that there is a huge market opportunity that is still untapped. We believe there is a competitive landscape, although it is still at a nascent stage. The current unit economics provide compelling opportunity ripe for disruption. Last but not least, we believe that the regulatory landscape is favorable, but also evolving. Now, a bit more detail. Let me check the time. Okay. I think we're fine. I'll continue for another 10 minutes and then I'm happy to take questions. So we believe that it is important, it'll be key to have a unique, highly disruptive business model, because any core innovation that is based on digital wallets will have to be completely free of any fees or charges for retail and individual customers. The reason I'm saying this is because existing solutions in Morocco, and I'm talking here about, I believe, Orange Pay and Wana Money. I think the customer has to pay. There is a fee that has to be paid. And we believe any future innovation, any future fintech innovation in the mobile payment sector, if they want to be more competitive, well, they have to overcome this problem. We believe that there is significant potential to disrupt the market for both existing and upcoming competition through product offering, as well as differentiated pricing. We believe that revenue generation should be built around higher value, between business to customer and business to business transaction, adjacent innovation, including saving accounts, microcredit, peer-to-peer lending, insurance marketplace, etc. Digital wallets maybe for tourists and foreign remittances. We believe that core innovation will lay the foundation for a much wider array of financial products and services, and the aim should be to build significant scale through accelerated customer acquisitions and roll out the suite of higher value financial products once a critical mass of users has been achieved. We believe that, I think that's a lot of information, so I'll try to be brief. In terms of the landscape or the market backdrop in Morocco, we believe that it is highly favorable, mainly because the country has embarked on a new era of reforms to transform the country's economy into a more competitive source of growth and productivity by promoting financial inclusion and transformation to a digital economy in Morocco. What I want to focus on here are these two statistics we have at the bottom. This is why I said earlier, only 29% of adults in Morocco have access to a bank account, lower than the MENA average. But look at this. 2018, there were 45 million mobile connections, representing 128% penetration rate. So this means, if you think about it, every person in Morocco, they've got one mobile and a half, if that makes sense. Yeah. So 58% of Morocco's population use the internet, ranking Morocco 24th worldwide. This is only to say, or this is mainly to say, that the fact that the penetration rate is 128% in Morocco, this means definitely people are comfortable using the mobiles, and it is very important to build on that advantage. Now, a huge market opportunity that is still untapped. Why do we believe that? Mainly because of 6 million users. I'm talking about mobile phones will be using e-wallets by 2024, according to the Moroccan Central Bank. So the BAM, Bank Al-Maghrib, they believe by 2024, 6 million mobile phone users will be using e-wallets, and this is equivalent to a market of $40 billion US. So there's a huge market opportunity for those who would like to invest in this area. Competitive landscape. Very briefly, again, there is key information here. Central Bank has issued licenses, 11 licenses for mobile wallet and payments. And you have here the examples I mentioned earlier. Only last year, Inwi launched their service. I can't remember whether it was Wanna Pay or Wanna e-wallet. Yeah, at Inwi, they launched the product. Can't remember the name. But I know for Orange, it was Orange Pay. Only recently, that's 3 or 4 months ago, and they believe that by the end of this year, they'll have 1 million subscribers. Similar for Inwi, they believe they'll reach the 1 million threshold by next year. So definitely, there is a the competitive landscape is there, and that's why you have existing telecom companies have network advantage given their existing distribution channel and brand recognition across the country. However, most are solely focused on digital wallets with limited, if any, vision to go beyond the value chain in terms of financial services offering. That's why we believe there is an opportunity to do things differently. Okay, I'll say 1 or 2 things about this slide. I want to focus on this. According to the National Agency for Telecommunication, 92% of Moroccans over 5 years of age have a mobile phone, with 73% of them using a smartphone. Again, this corroborates what I mentioned earlier in terms of the increase in penetration rate of mobile phone use in Morocco. Another important point in this slide, there seems to be a need to introduce a customized or customizable product with significantly low, if not zero, fee structure that is strategically targeted for different user segments. Something tailored for businesses, another one for farmers, tourists, etc., to optimize fee revenues and transaction volumes through add-on services. I think this is the last or the second last slide. We believe that the environment, the business environment or the regulatory landscape in Morocco is highly receptive to fintech, given that the country has adopted a clear legal framework for mobile payments. However, there are currently no regulation for more sophisticated fintech offerings. Okay, to summarize, Morocco is ready for the democratization of financial services. Okay, this is one way to put it. Only 29% of Moroccans have access to bank accounts. I think I said this a few times now. There is an opportunity to bank millions of people in Morocco and in the process launch a profitable business. So I'm encouraging those of you, especially at Africa Business School, given the support that you might have in terms of doing research, launching businesses, etc., well, there's definitely potential there. Fintech innovations, we need to aim for a bespoke, simple and fair mobile banking account accessible through both smart and non-smartphones for people in Morocco. A great potential to explore new markets across the continent, since Morocco is seen as a gateway to Africa. Given that we are doing, or I am doing this presentation, I am hosted by Africa Business School, so it's only befitting that I encourage you to, I believe the vision of Africa Business School is to be the leading business school in the continent. So I think it is a great vision, definitely challenging, but very ambitious. And therefore, fintech is definitely an area that has great potential in Africa. It is a fact that some other countries are slightly ahead, maybe South Africa or Kenya. M-Pesa, the company that I mentioned earlier, started in Kenya, but obviously they have operations in many African countries now. But so Morocco might have some catch up to do down the line, but there is definitely potential. And I think by saying this, I'm not like adding anything new, but maybe just reminding everybody that the potential is there. I believe, not sure. Okay, as the cash. All right. I think I'll stop here. Let me just go back to the slide where I say this is the time to ask questions. Let me share. So this is our Q&A discussion starts now. I'm not sure if anybody, how does this work, but I'm happy for you to unmute your microphone, ask me any question you want. We have about 15 minutes for questions and answers, and I'm happy to take any.
Thank you, Dr. Ajendali, for your presentation. So actually we have a question from Nihal. She put it in the chat box. She said, as the cash is near 60% of the total transaction, how do you think that Morocco could take as a first step to be a cashless economy? Like integrating blockchain on the banking industry by reducing costs of KYC. I don't know what does it mean.
Know your customer.
Yeah, onboarding or else.
Well, I have to be honest and say there's very little I know about Morocco except for the study we conducted in terms of mobile payments. So I have to be honest and say that's not something I can answer at this stage, mainly because my fintech research is focused on the UK or in general. And Morocco, I'm happy to take questions on the points I discussed in my presentation, to be fair to my colleagues who conducted this research with me and to myself. So any questions on what I have discussed would be welcome. I do appreciate that, like Nihal, people might have other interests, but that's not something I can answer at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. She added the blockchain is a database that contains all the historical data, not like other databases.
Yeah, I can see the question.
Yeah, you can read it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
She said, what advice can you give me as a research track for my doctoral thesis, please?
So I'm going to read this for everybody. The blockchain is a database that contains all the historical data, not like other databases. In addition, it has by nature identity management, not like the internet, which needs password. What advice can you give as a research track for my doctoral thesis? Well, I think Nihal gave a definition, her definition of blockchain, and then asked me about her thesis. My question would be, what is your thesis on? In order for me to be able to give advice. So I think that's. I would ask Nihal to probably say what is her thesis on, and maybe I can advise her accordingly. I think there's a question from Joy Elizabeth. Can the robo-financial advisors help reduce the behavioral biases of investors? Will they replace the human financial advisors? I think that's a very good question. And my answer is, if you look at the three companies that are offering their leaders in terms of robo advice, for example, Betterment and Wealthfront. Betterment, two American companies, Betterment and Wealthfront. I think they grow, their share price tripled over the last 3 years. And the main reason is because many financial companies have already started adopting, have already started replacing, if you want, human resources by robots. Now, what I want to say here is there's definitely a move towards robot advice, but I do not believe they will replace like those investment professionals will lose their jobs. But what I think will happen is investment professionals will have to upskill to work. Their role in terms of investment banking will change. Their role will move to a stage where all the tasks that can be done with the robot in a more effective, efficient way. So this will be, if you want, the task will move away from human towards robot. But you have other tasks where you need the investment analyst to look at the bigger picture, where you have this what we call the qualitative judgment. This is where the robot role, at least for the time being, is limited. And therefore, what I believe is, yes, the robot would replace or would disrupt the way finance or financial services are performing, or the processes, the way the processes of financial institutions perform, but I don't think they replace fully the humans. Behavioral biases, definitely. So I'm still trying to answer the same question or the second question from the same person. I believe they reduce behavioral biases, but it is very important to remember that the robot acts or the robot advice based on the information that is collected from the market. And therefore, if there is a bias in terms of the input that this robot is getting, well, the bias is still there. But obviously, if you look at it from a perspective of the person, I mean, on paper, yes, they will remove part of it, but it is very important to remember that the robot or the input of the robot, the data input for the robot comes from the market, and sometimes this bias or the behavioral bias, it cannot be eliminated from the market itself. Next question. How to make a difference between the fields of fintech and financial innovation? This is what I explained at the beginning, and I said financial innovation is any innovation that aims to make the financial industry more efficient and to make it or to enable it to provide better services for a reduced cost. So financial innovation is literally an innovation in the financial industry. So this is financial innovation. The moment you say fintech, you're still talking financial innovation, but the special element of fintech is that you are innovating based on new technology. In fact, blockchain is an innovation. So how is it an innovation? Crypto, I mentioned earlier cryptocurrency, and I said it uses the blockchain, this database that is available in the cloud or elsewhere. It uses this new technology to do things differently. First, it provides more security. It provides more privacy. It is less expensive to run, etc. So the moment you have the main reason or the main element you need to look at if you want to distinguish between financial innovation, financial technology, is see if there is what we call a material contribution of the technology in the innovation. If there is a material contribution of technology in your innovation, then this is financial technology. If the innovation is not material, that's not a financial technology. You gave us an example of the UK as a leader in fintech. Do you know about e-resident Estonia program? Not really. Which grant digital card that enables you to access fintech and business transaction without physically. I'm not sure. I don't know about Estonia. I know it's a great country, but no, I don't know. I haven't got much information about the e-resident Estonia program. No, no. Nisreen asked, a second, trying to read the comments. I'll see if I missed anything from the beginning. No, so Elizabeth, Nihal. Okay, now Abdelatif. I wonder if you can, please give us some examples of blockchain or fintech applications in general trade and finance. Fintech application in general in trade finance. In trade finance, the one thing I can think of when you say trade, I think you're talking financial trading. If that's the case, algorithmic trading now is definitely a fintech innovation that falls under the family of artificial intelligence. You have now algorithms executing trades. So algorithm feeds into information feeds into the algorithm every single day, and this algorithm looks at the movements of the market, and based on these movements and based on the kind of thresholds that they have programmed, they have been programmed to perform. So this is algorithmic trading, if you want, is definitely an area of fintech that is used now increasingly in financial trading. It is definitely making a difference. So I hope this is what you're looking for. I'm not sure by trade finance if you mean financial trading, but feel free to come back to me. But algorithmic trading is one area that is definitely of increasing use in financial trading. Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. I'm a PhD candidate at ABS in the entrepreneurship cluster. My question is, did COVID-19 impacted positively or negatively the fintech startup in the UK? Okay. So what's the question? Nisreen, that's a very interesting topic. It's very interesting because I know the CBI in the UK as a Center for Business Insights, the CBI Center for Business Insights, they conducted a study to see, I'm not sure if I can share it with you now, I don't have the time, but feel free to connect with me later. I know that the CBI has conducted a study to assess the impact of COVID on fintech deals, and it seems from first reading that the number of deals has dropped. It seems that COVID-19 has had a negative impact on fintech deals. So it might be, so I thought you're doing your PhD in COVID-19, so this is your question, but that's fine. Definitely, the answer to your question is definitely COVID-19 has had a negative impact on the number of these fintech deals, especially in the United Kingdom. So it impacted negatively in terms of deals, but some companies managed to make strides, and this is the example of the digital bank Starling, which I mentioned earlier. Yes, I'm happy to. I don't have a problem. If Hasna wants or can share the recording later, that's fine by me. Amin, thank you, Professor. for your rich presentation, considering what I do in my PhD topic. Elaborating a project rating model based on machine learning. What kind of background should I have to succeed in my research in this area? Machine learning, this is very interesting. You're definitely heading in the right direction. I'm not sure what is your first degree, because I'll tell you why. I'm talking from experience, obviously. I have had to learn and educate myself in fintech, because the moment you talk fintech, you're talking technology, and the moment you're talking technology, you're talking IT and computing programs, etc. So it depends how familiar or what's your first degree. If it's engineering, awesome. I think just keep going. If you're not, you come from a business school or you come from non-computing type of education, I think try to make the effort, and I'm sure you will, to educate yourself in data science. That's definitely an area which would enable you to progress in your research. I'm not sure if I can say this, but I know you said machine learning, but it seems that such applications are not very developed in Morocco for some reason. I don't know the reason, but it seems to me from looking from outside that having had discussion with a number of colleagues, academic colleagues in Morocco, it seems to me that when you talk about robo-advisory, when you talk about machine learning applications in finance, the application seems to be at an embryonic stage. So it might be interested to explore why, like you try to grasp, you try to understand the fintech landscape, maybe machine learning applications in finance, why they're not as developed as elsewhere. Is it because of the costs, because of the culture, because of, so yeah, I mean, there are different ways to answer your question, but definitely I'd be the first one interested in reading a research that discusses how to overcome challenges to implementing machine learning applications in finance in North of Africa. I wish you the best, Amin. Kauta, thank you, Professor. What are some regulations that might impede the growth of fintech in a country? Listen, I can talk about Morocco mainly because 14 or 15 years ago, when I decided to come to the UK, I had to pay for my degree. It was a postgraduate degree at the time, a few £1,000s. And I had to go, I was resident in Casablanca, and I had to go to the capital, Rabat, Office d'Échange, which is probably the finance ministry or an office in the finance ministry, to get an authorization to be able to pay in pound, to be able to make a transfer from my bank in Casablanca to the university bank in the UK. I thought that's amazing. I needed a permission. I need the approval of the ministry to send back overseas. They talk about a few thousand. We're not talking about millions. And therefore, I mean, to answer Couch's question, regulation, I don't want to upset the central bank governor. I'm a big fan of Mr. Jouahari, I think, central bank governor in Morocco, very smart and gentleman. But in Morocco, you would know probably that the currency, the Moroccan dirham, is fixed. The value of the Moroccan dirham is pegged against a basket of currencies. So you have the Moroccan dirham is pegged to the euro, but probably 40% is pegged to the dollar, 30% to the euro, or vice versa. You have the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen. So the Moroccan dirham as a currency is not freely floating. This means that the central bank intervenes in the FX market in Morocco to keep the currency at a certain level. Now, you might be wondering why we're talking FX here, or foreign exchange. The moment you have a central bank that intervenes in financial markets, well, the scope in terms of what you can do in fintech might be limited. Now, having said that, the fact that Bank Al Maghrib only last year authorized 11 new licenses for mobile payments, well, I think there is definitely willingness from the regulators in Morocco to allow new companies, new startups, new ideas to flourish in the fintech landscape. So I would say regulations, the main regulations that would probably be an obstacle are the regulations in terms of transfer of money, how much you can transfer, the frequency, etc. I think this is one of the biggest obstacles you probably would have in Morocco. Sarah, first of all, thank you for this insightful presentation. The question is, what are the key takeaways that we can take from London as it is fintech capital? What are the approaches that Morocco can adopt to be competitive country? As you know, we are going step by step on the digital transition. A very nice way to put it, Sarah, step by step. Definitely that's the way to do it. At least we are moving in Morocco, which is great. What can you learn from London? I think the support. I'll be honest. I don't aim to. I'm not somebody who likes to throw flowers at people, but at least I talk about academia because I think you might be a PhD student, and I think the effort that Africa Business School is doing in terms of releasing funds for research, even organizing this kind of webinars, this is something you have to use at your advantage. Now, let me answer the question by starting in London. The reason I'm talking about ABS is because here in the UK, they're doing exactly the same thing. Can you believe? Only recently, I found that the UK has launched what we call a startup visa. So if you have an idea, a great idea, you can submit your business plan to the Home Office. Obviously, there must be rules for eligibility, but this is a new visa where the UK is saying to the whole of the world, you have ideas, show us what you can do, get a visa for 2 years. If your business is successful, that's it. You can settle, you can continue growing, etc. So what I'm trying to say is what you can learn, or what Morocco can learn from the UK, what maybe Marrakesh or Rabat or Casablanca can learn from London, is that you need to support. There must be, I think, two things. The first one is the regulation I mentioned earlier when I was talking to Kauta will have to provide a margin of maneuver. People need to feel that in terms of regulation, they can move. Yeah, too much restriction. I would understand it's important to control, to have financial stability in the country, etc. But it is very important, yeah, to have a balance. So in terms of regulation, I believe the country is moving in the right direction, and that's something that emulates what's happening in London. In London as well, I can tell you the reason the country is well ahead in comparison to Germany and France, by the way, we're well ahead of them, is because we have a lax regulation. Is because regulators, they speak to the financial, to fintech professionals and to the financial sector. They speak, they sit on the same table. So that dialogue between regulators and market players or stakeholders is key. I think it's happening in Morocco, but maybe not. So that's something to develop as we go along. That's the first part. The second part is to nurture ideas. And this is why I mentioned Africa Business School earlier. If you have an idea, you have whether it's a business idea, whether it's a research idea, I'm almost certain that if you put this forward to the committee, research committee in ABS, they would support you. You probably get the right supervision from faculty, from some of the top quality faculty that you have. And that would enable you actually to advance in your research. But the reason I'm saying this, I mean, to answer the question again for everybody, you want to learn from London. London is doing two things. First one, in terms of regulation, you've got this dialogue happening between regulators and stakeholders. And secondly, they're enabling the human resource to develop, to grow. They're supporting this human resource to move forward. And that's why you have universities now offering MSCs in fintech. That's why in fact, my university, my home institution is offering an MBA in fintech and data analytics. That's why we have PhD scholarships in fintech. So you need these two things. On an individual level, people like you should be given the opportunity to grow, prosper, learn, and explore. And there must be this discussion or the dialogue between fintech professionals and regulators should continue. Okay, thank you. Trade finance in the sense of financial commercial transaction between companies. Ah, okay. Thank you, Abdelatif, for coming back and explaining a bit more about trade finance. I think the blockchain actually, because letters of credit factoring, in terms of trade finance, I would say the peer-to-peer lending, because peer-to-peer lending means companies or different institutions can borrow from each other, can exchange, can transfer funds between each other without the need to go via a bank. I think what blockchain, for example, would add, it's more trustworthy technology in comparison to letter of credit factoring, etc. So peer-to-peer lending would be definitely an innovation that would be that can be applicable or can disrupt actually the trade finance sector or the blockchain industry. That's another example I can think of. Thank you for coming back and providing more explanation. Nihal is back. Could you share with us where to find ratings or data about fintech like Gartner or else? I don't know who Gartner is, but fintech, for example, if you want information about cryptocurrencies, I think we have hundreds of cryptocurrencies now which are listed. You can go to CoinMarket. CoinMarket, I'm not sure if it's .com, etc., but it provides you with the real-time prices of these currencies. Actually, there's another source. I would invite everybody to check level 39, level as in level, and 39 as the number 39. This is the fintech incubator. This is our fintech incubator in London. In level 39, it's amazing now, I'm doing advertisement for many companies. I should ask for some royalties. Level 39, they have 1,250 fintech companies in their business incubator, 1,250. Some of these, and this is, I'm trying to answer Niha's question in terms of the data. Some of these companies are specifically focusing, or their business is to provide students or researchers or professionals with data, fintech data, if you want. One example that springs to mind is Nordigen. Nordigen, I can write it if you want. So what I said earlier is check level 39. That's a fintech incubator. And Nordigen, that's another company that yeah, could you give us a certificate of attendance? I don't have the power to do this, but if Hasna would like to, I don't have a problem with that. I'll let Hasna answer this one. Okay, I'll take one more question. I'll probably stop here. One more question. Abdel Jalil, you mentioned 98% of Moroccans. I think I mentioned 128%. Yeah, anyway, you mentioned 98% Moroccan have mobile phone, 58% have access to internet. Do you think that is struggle to fintech evolution in Morocco, and why? What reforms could Bank Al Maghrib to ease finance policies? I'm not sure I can understand the question. Do you think there is struggle to fintech? Hasna, do you want to help with this question? Abdel Jalil Muha.
He can speak actually. You can, yeah. Mr. Abdel Jalil, you can unmute yourself and ask directly.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Hasna. Good afternoon, doctor. Good afternoon, participants. Well, my questions, as you mentioned, maybe 98% of Moroccans that have mobiles. That's correct. That was correct.
I thought if you talk about the penetration rate, is 128%.
Anyway, because I noticed that there is a gap between owners of mobile and people who have access to the internet. So there is a large gap. So my concern, do you think that is a struggle? It means an obstacle to access to fintech facilities. Okay, this is the first part. The second part, maybe you have answered of it, because Bank al-Maghrib is the higher authority that control finance transactions in Morocco. Do you think that a reform of Bank al-Maghrib must be implemented as soon as possible? Because as we have seen, only just 11 licenses that were granted. Correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll get back to one thing which I have mentioned, and I think, in my opinion, it was very important. I talked about Estonia, because Estonia has implemented a resident program. It means that you be a resident of Estonia, but not existing in Australia, out of Estonia, but you have the right to set up your company under an Estonian law. How is the process? You apply to the government of Estonia, and then if the application is granted, you will get an interview in the embassy, and you will get a digital card. By this digital card, just you plug in it in your computer, and you have access to all government facilities, which include investment authority, banks, and so on. It means you don't have to move. I'm currently holding a digital card, and I'm running now a business which is based in Estonia, but I'm existing in Morocco. Okay, thank you, Professor.
Thanks you, Abdul. Thank you. Thanks. So, am I supposed to answer the question now, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So what's the question? Because you've been talking about Estonia, and I thought it's great, but
Okay.
yeah,
So
in one sentence,
up,
if you can, one sentence.
Okay, in one sentence.
Yeah.
Do you think, or what kind of reforms Bank al-Maghrib must implement currently to that we go forward in a fintech implementation?
Thanks.
It understood? Is it understood?
Thank you, Abdul Jalil. It is.
Welcome.
As I said, I think Kauta mentioned earlier that in Morocco things are changing. There's the step-by-step thing, and I believe. Listen, from my own experience, I feel that the country is heading in the right direction in terms of fintech support, regulatory fintech support, because arguably 11 licenses, this is a lot. I like to think it's a lot. So the willingness is there, and it is very important to remember to contextualize what Morocco is as a country, and whether we like it or not, the financial industry in Morocco is not as liberated, if you want, as what we have in the UK or the US or Japan or China. I mean, you look at the stock exchange, you compare Casablanca Stock Exchange with other stock exchanges, and you would get the gist of what we're talking about. So I think in terms of size, in terms of the capabilities of the country, I feel it is going in the right direction. I would reiterate what I mentioned earlier in terms of the dialogue. I think more should be done on the direction of promoting and supporting new fintech ventures. So if there is somebody with an idea, I think they need to get the support, the idea and the knowledge to implement this idea. It is very important not to make it hard for them to implement this idea. I think it'd be sad, because I know from experience that you can get frustrated when it comes to admin paperwork in Morocco, and yeah, I didn't do any business in Morocco for over 10 years now, so I like to think that things have changed, especially because now, in fact, I just remembered, we have eGov in Morocco, like you can do things online compared to many years ago. So this is what I'm trying to say. I feel there's an effort in terms of digital transformation in Morocco. So this is definitely something to build on, and hopefully, as I said, with more ideas, more support for research and for businesses, for startups, and more regulatory, an increase in regulatory partnership, I would say, between government and the private sector, I really feel the country has a great potential. I do not have a magic recipe, but as you said, if Estonia has done it, And as far as I know, Estonia is small compared to Morocco geographically in terms of population. I'm sure Morocco can. Anyway, I think it's 15 minutes past the hour. This was meant to last 1 hour, so I like to think that most of you here did learn something from the presentation. I hope so. I hope you found it informative and useful. I'd like to thank you for staying, for over 1 hour. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just type my name on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you. And then if you have any further questions, I probably would be able to answer them. I have no problem if Hasna would like to share this recording with you. No problem either if she'd like to issue with certificates. In fact, I'd like one as well. So there you go. There you go.
Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Jambari. On behalf of the African Business School, let me thank you, and thank you for your comments, your insight. It was so, the presentation was insightful. I think the students got proper information and knowledge about Fintech, and they can make a great project or PhD research about it. So thank you. Looking forward to inviting you in our campus, inshallah.
Inshallah,
In Benguir. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hasna. Stay safe, and all the best in your research and any other endeavors. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.